This is the Chris and Retro Podcast, part 2 of Chris's conversation with Mitch Smiley of the Hard Intentions YouTube channel starts now.
Angry, mad, full of shit, thinking, okay, now I'm going to go down a gangster road, you know?
Mm-hmm. Was that only because was that just kind of you'd given up that there was any other options, or it was becoming so attractive to you that you wanted it?
A little bit of both. You know, I figured, look, I like in Preston, once again, they had a vocational area they called the trade line. You know, you go over to the trade area and learn trades, but I was a fuck up. So they have like behavior modification programs they were trying on all these kids in youth authority, and it's like experimental shit. They were experimenting with us. And instead of saying, hey, go over there and learn a fucking trade so when you get out, you can work and make some money and make a living, it's just like, oh, we're going to punish you because you're not behaving right. Mm-hmm. And we're not going to let you go to the trade area. So,
you know, what's
Preston.
But they told you, they told those messages to you so much that, you know, this is where you must be. It's almost like now your head is programmed to believe, well, this is all I am. You know,
did you
know you were an artist then?
That opportunity. Yeah, I'm an artist now.
Yeah, but did you know that then?
I started getting into tattooing there in Preston.
Here's one of your pieces.
Drawing a little. Yeah.
I'm just putting one of those up.
Yeah. Wow.
That's one of your prints. And I got one of your shirts on for Hard Intentions.
Oh, cool.
But this is all some of the art he produces now. But the reason I'm bringing that up is to say, you know, if somebody had told you that you actually could be an up and coming entrepreneur in the art scene, if somebody had presented that option versus being a, you know, hardcore guy, which would you have done?
Well, you know, I got out of Preston. I had 5 really big sheets of, because we beat some guy up and I did my last 60 days locked up in my cell. So I was just drawing tattoo patterns. So I had these big sheets of tattoo patterns. And one thing I did when I got out is I went, you know, San Diego was kind of seedy area downtown back then. All the tattoo shops were on Broadway. I went to every tattoo shop downtown. I showed them my patterns. I'm like, I want to tattoo. I'd like to get a job. Blah, blah, blah. And they're like, the black and gray tattoo shit back then was not happening. They were tattooing military guys, tourists, all that kind of shit, you know.
Gotcha.
And they're like, yeah, we don't do that kind of work in here. Had one of those shops take an interest, like, all right, let's see what this guy's got. I mean, I became an artist in prison. You know, I could have had a career as a tattoo artist back then, but I would have done that, you know?
Yeah. The reason I'm pulling some of these things out in your story is because all along the way, even though you're living this high risk life, there still could have been options presented to you if somebody's willing to take a few minutes to invest in it. But the people that were investing in you were just making you stronger at probably the more negative side of who you were, you know, depending on your perspective.
Yeah. You know, I mean, it got rejected by the tattoo shops. If someone would have just said, hey, all right, check this out. We don't do that kind of work, but we do this kind of work.
Yep.
You know, color, flash, you know, the stuff on the wall. It was just 79, you know, 78 actually. So tattooing was a lot different back then. You know, I have a homeboy that actually lives out here by me now. He started tattooing. He's a couple years younger than me, so he started tattooing around 80, 81, which is around that time. And he's still tattooing now. He became a tattoo shop owner, a homeowner.
Nice.
You know, I could have had a totally different path in life.
So, you know, with that, I think it's an important thing as we, you know, dependent across the audience to, you know, as we're looking at this thing, and there was always opportunities that could have been presented, but they weren't always, people weren't diligent to stick around. I don't know if you felt the same way, but I mean, in my short period, I had nowhere near the extensive experience you did with, you know, programs and state programs and everything else. But one of the things I found that was hard to find credible when people were supposedly there supporting is there's always somebody new. I could go to the exact same program and I'm never going to see the same person because of their burnout. You know, they're not getting paid anything to do what they do. And see these people that could possibly present those, and many well-meaning people, you know, they're just not the same person every time. So, you know, I personally didn't trust a lot of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
you know, I had a motorcycle, and I'm like, okay, I was selling crack, I was buying stolen guns, I was, I was in the shit, and I thought, well, you know, I ended up getting a murder and I got a life sentence. But what's funny, it's not really funny, but while I was selling dope and using dope, I was always really cautious and suspicious. And the older guys that I used to get dope from would tell me, don't ever do this and don't ever do that. And, if you're in a room with somebody, comes in, gets introduced to you through someone else, you don't ever take the money and you don't ever give them the dope. And, all this little shit drug dealers teach people that, so here I'm being super cautious about selling dope. And when I got my case, I was in the county jail. There was a guy in there. He got caught with 3 pieces of heroin, which is like 3 ounces of heroin. I'm thinking, fuck, they're going to give this guy a gang of time, And he goes, yeah, I'm going to get 5 years. And he's only going to do like 3. I thought, well, shit, I should have been out there selling dope like, Pablo Escobar. Fuck, that's nothing.
Yeah, I don't think you should have trusted your decision making back then, but okay.
Yeah, I've been saying that's,
Yeah.
So, I was selling dope and, thought I was slick, thought I was going to beat the system. I was making enough money to keep my lifestyle going, riding my bike, food, different shit, partying, and, meeting people. I'm thinking, eventually I'll meet some guys and I'll move up the ladder, the food chain of the dope thing, make big money. But there's a thing about this is I had a group of guys I grew up with, and they all built motorcycles and rode motorcycles. Like my friend Tommy was a welder, and these guys were buying Triumphs and BSAs and chopping them, stretching the frames. Tommy would cut the frames up and weld and make choppers out of them. And I was the youngest guy in the crew, 16, then 17, and then the oldest guy would have been about 25, and I started hanging out with him less and less and less, and gravitating more towards the drugs and the money, and I'm an outlaw motherfucker, kind of mentality.
Yep.
But those guys would tell me, I'd go see them, we'd stay around, we'd drink beer and smoke weed. They weren't really into the crank and all that shit. And they'd tell me, hey, bro, you got to slow down. You're going to end up going to prison. And I tell them, my response was, I don't give a fuck, and,
Because you probably weren't thinking 38 years of prison. You at that point,
I'm thinking if I get caught for anything, it's going to be for drugs or beating somebody up, But I didn't really realize that those were the guys that really, they had love for me. I grew up with them as a kid. Went to school, a lot of them.
I think at that time too, usually people that are telling you slow down isn't all that exciting anyway, and you kind of were following a little bit of a rush. It sounds like as well. Your ego was taken over. You were King Kong.
Yeah, but I didn't really have an out.
Yeah. Yep.
I didn't have an out. A couple months before I got this case that sent me to prison, I did actually about a month. I went to a few warehouses and I put in some job applications at tile companies. It was a tile warehouse and a couple other spots. And I used my homegirl's phone number as a connection. They didn't have cell phones and shit back then. And I remember when I just knew, look, I need to make steady money, low risk, regular money. Cause I wanted more shit. I wanted to get a truck. I'm riding around a motorcycle. I want to get a truck. I want to get, nicer shit. That's the nature of things. You want nicer shit. And it seemed like the drug money, it wasn't steady,
Right.
And so when I got this case, I called Cindy and I go, hey, what's up? Blah, blah, blah. And she goes, hey, some guy called here the other day, wanted to give you a job. I was like, oh, fuck, But, he was just about a week too short,
Right. So that was, so you got the job offer after the big offense in your life, or yeah.
Yeah.
That stinks.
Yeah.
So if you could,
and so, what's that?
No, if you could just for the audience, because I want to make sure we get to, what life has been like on the other side of all this. I think it's an important part of your story. because
Yeah.
I'm going to steer people to your channel because I mean you're such a candid person. So one thing I really do appreciate about watching your show is that you'll just say it like it is. I see a lot of other channels out there trying to glorify the whole situation. I don't see you doing that. You speak truthfully about it, and your experiences there. But if you could explain just real quick what it was that happened that caused 38 years for you, and then perhaps we can talk about excuse me, some of your observations with how you even got out. There was like what 11 different parole boards or something.
14.
14. Yeah. So if we could just start with what got you there.
Yeah, we know you got to be honest, open, and willing, right?
Yeah,
So
for sure.
yeah, I met some older cats, and I didn't really know them that well. I met them through a friend of mine that I was living with. And guys into boxing. So we used to go to this karate studio and train in the back room. And it's so cool, now I'm learning how to box a little bit and motorcycles and, whatever. So I went in the bar and with this other friend of mine, a guy I thought was my friend. So my other co-defendant and I were in the alley. Let's go in the bar, and there was dude that I was training with. And so we start drinking. Guy walks in the bar, sits next to us. He's in a motorcycle club. Some of my friends don't really get along with. Words are exchanged between one of my co-defendants and him, and I'm in the middle. They're both 24. I was 17. So I look at this and I'm like, check this lame out, And so he hits my co-defendant in the face with a beer pitcher, knocks him down. Well, I'm learning. I already was fighting violence, so I'm learning how to box a little bit. So I jump up. Guy's 31 years old. I start boxing
And
his
you were what,
face a little bit.
17, you said?
Yeah, 17. So dude gets up off the ground. They start grappling, go out on the sidewalk. I push my way out the sidewalk, and he's on top of my co-defendant, punching him in the face. So, the mentality is, all on one on all, right? So if you're alone and you're outnumbered, you got to get it. And if you've got someone else outnumbered, it's all on one, So I start kicking the dude, stomping him. And next thing I know, he's bleeding. Somebody else stabbed him and he died. We all got arrested. They offered me and the guy getting beaten up manslaughter. They offered the other person a second-degree murder. It was a package deal or nothing. So if you want to take the deal and your co-defendants don't, then you have to testify, basically.
Right.
And the deals got all the way down to just testify, sign a statement, and we'll let you go home. And I was like, fuck you, And so my lawyer goes, look, they either want make a rat out of you or they want to send you to prison. And I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to prison, But, sitting in the county jail, 17 years old, it started to really set in. Hey, I've done some shit, done a little time, but this is going to be a stretch, And by a stretch, I thought maybe because so we went to trial. We all got found guilty. I got found guilty of aiding and abetting by vicarious liability, So all the stuff I was doing and thinking I was slick and getting over, and I got easy money and drugs and party and all that was like, I got arrested for something that was the farthest thing from. It never crossed my mind that I would be sitting in county jail with a murder beef.
Yeah. Well, and especially, the whole thing, I think that you said at one point, if you'd all accepted the deals individually as that one unit, you'd have ended up with like 6 years, right? Like 5, 6 years.
Yeah, I would have got 6 years.
Yeah. And then because not all three of you were able to come to an agreement, you ended up with this longer life sentence.
Well, I mean, if they would have offered all of us a manslaughter, I'm sure the deal would have been taken. But if you offer two guys a manslaughter and one guy a second-degree murder, I mean, he was facing 15 to life. So he's like, fuck that. I'm not taking the deal. Mm-hmm. Well, that's what we ended up with anyway.
Gotcha.
So, I would have done 6 years, but
So
You
you're,
know, just,
and I have a lot of feelings about that whole thing. I mean, I think it brings up many side conversations relative to, is there a loyal society at all, no matter where you are anymore? Who's loyal and who isn't. I mean, you hear rat thrown around an awful lot too, and I'm starting to see a generation that's they're in self-preservation mode.
yeah. Well, look at this guy, this rapper, this 6ix9ine kid. I mean,
Yeah,
he
he's
threw
all over the
himself
place.
in a car with a group of guys, and he ended up telling on everything, and now he's out, and everyone knows he's an informant, but he's a big baller, millionaire rapper. No one gives a shit.
Well,
So I mean,
and you see a lot, and I think that's one thing I appreciate about your channel is that you're not, um, you didn't do anything out of to violate your loyalty at all to get out. And I see there's a lot of channels out there with people that really did some shady things on society as well as to the people they were in trouble with, and now so they've got YouTube channels and really being a
yeah,
voice. It's the reason I sought you out too, is because I think that your story is very raw and authentic. At the same time, I've also heard you and actually one of your guests one time really talk about the kids and what we can do to help them. But what I would like to
yeah,
do is just so you went into this thing with an expectation when somebody is warning you, your friend was warning you as a teenager, say, "Whoa, you're going to get in trouble." You kind of like, oh, "I can take it because it's only going to be this many years in my head. It's not going to be life." And then you get
right,
in a situation where you're facing, real charges, and you're thinking, "Okay, well, we accept this. I might get 6 years," and all of a sudden it turns into life. So now you're in prison, and you've had some amazing stories. Again, steering people back to your YouTube channel because there's a lot of stories about your time there. You've been to pretty much every institution, what it sounds like.
yeah, quite a few.
Yep.
They transfer around quite a bit. You got to remember too. I knew some guys on the street that had murder beefs. They had first-degree murder beefs. They only did 14 years. Second-degree murder beefs, guys are doing 5 or 6 years. But 6 months before I got arrested, they came out with a new law, and they made second-degree murder 15 to life, and they made first-degree murder 25 to life. So they changed the rules. But even so, I was eligible for parole in 10 years. But see, in my mind, I thought, you know what I could do? I'm young. I could do 14, 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
But then they changed the laws. I didn't know that. And so I got 15 to life. I was eligible for parole after 10 years. And, I got arrested right at the beginning of the tough on crime shit. They had 27,000 people in California prisons. They had like 12 prisons. And they were crying that it was overcrowded. And during my prison term, at one time, they had almost 180,000 guys in prison with 34 prisons.
Wow.
All the day rooms were full. The gymnasiums were full. I mean, they had beds everywhere. The food just, So the tough on crime thing happened, and I went to board after 10 years, and they're like, yeah, fuck you, you're not getting out.
Hmm. And that was the first time you'd gone before the parole board?
Yeah.
So what happened? So now you're going to appear before them another 13 times. And each time so how heavily did external politics and rule changes play into your freedom?
Well, a lot. And the mentality was, you go to prison, you can fuck up, do whatever you want for the first 5 or 6 years, and then straighten your ass up, take some programs. It shows the parole board you've changed, and they'll let you out. But that's not what happened. Things changed. We got Duke Majan was our governor for 8 years. He was the attorney general that made the 15 to life, 25 to life laws. He built a bunch of prisons. And then we got Pete Wilson, who's a straight alcoholic. I know some friends of mine that knew him personally, but he was even worse. He built some more prisons, and so what happened while I was in prison, I don't know if you want to hear all the horror stories of prison, but California is one of the most violent prison systems in the country at that time. San Quentin would have 300 or 400 stabbings a year, anywhere from 5 to 10, 15 murders a year. That's just in one prison. So right. I mean, spare the details.
Well, I think that,
but I mean, if you were fighting, they would shoot you with a shotgun. If they saw a weapon, they'd shoot you with a Mini 14, and
I think what's important about that too, though, is that I think we get caught up in, well, that's just a movie. Well, it was actually your life. I mean, your daily struggle was actually your life. I think the realities of what it is when you're actually having this taken from you. The reason I brought up the public policy thing is it always goes back to the choices that you made to get yourself in a circumstance that could get you put in there. And so the earlier we can get ahead of that and have it be a message that kids are hearing or anybody's hearing, the better off, because by the time you get there, you are owned by the state. They're going to make their changes and you have no say.
Well, you're like a cat. It's like you're cattle. You're just a number.
Yeah. Yep.
Cattle ranchers have cattle, and every cattle costs money. Out here where I live, it's a free range thing. So we got cattle on the roads, right?
Yeah.
If you hit one of those cows, that you're going to pay that rancher for that cow and 3 generations of that cow.
Holy cow! No pun intended.
You know what I mean? It's the same thing for prisoners. You're just a cash cow.
Yeah.
So inside the prison, everyone's jockeying. You're in prison now. You're doing a lot of time. So back then the food wasn't too bad, but I mean, you want to eat good. You want decent clothes. Back then you could have your own clothes.
Uh-huh. You
want a decent TV, just music, right? You want stuff. I got into hobby drawing. I said, hey, I've been tattooing as a kid and youth authority a little bit on the street. So if I'm going to call myself a tattoo artist, then I better learn how to be an artist.
Uh-huh.
I got into drawing a little bit, drawing tattoo patterns, tattooing. And so that gives you a little money. Of course, I was involved with the illegal activity. My drug substance abuse didn't stop. I would make wine, snort crank, smoke weed, But so everyone's jockeying to do and get the things that they want to do and get the things that they want to have to make their life comfortable in there. And then you've got other guys, they got their only fucking game is to take from other guys that got game. Mm-hmm. If you got hustle, you got brains, you can figure out how to get the things that you want. There's other guys around watching. They want a part of what you got because they're too fucking stupid to figure out how to get their own shit. So, I mean, and you have to be aware of them. You don't want them to know your business because then you're in a spot where you're going to have to stab them or whatever. There's guys getting killed, guys getting stabbed over trivial shit. Guys get killed over a pack of cigarettes. That's a cliche. That's actually true. Mm-hmm. Guys can get killed over $5,
Yeah, I think I don't think that people that haven't been exposed to any of that realize how valuable currency actually is. It's
a stressful environment,
right?
Because you're trying to live and you're trying to be comfortable and you're trying to have shit because you don't want to live like a dog,
right?
And you have your ego and your pride and all that shit that says, hey, even though I'm in prison, I don't want to live like the bottom of the barrel. And then I met some guys in prison that had been there prior to my coming to prison. They're older guys, biker guys. Some of them are in clubs, some of them aren't. And, they taught me about how to live in there. And that finally, one of them's like, hey, dummy, you want to fucking spend the rest of your time in and out of the hole, or you want to party and make money? And, which meant, you want to just be comfortable in here and just kick it. And so I took instruction from those guys and I learned how to live in there. But, it's I can't tell you, there's an expression, the tension's so thick you could cut it with a knife. Uh-huh. All that shit's true. It is true. They had a riot in San Quentin with the blacks and the Mexicans, and it lasted, 20 minutes. That's a long time. Guys were getting stabbed, shot. I think 85 guys got stabbed and shot. I wasn't out on the upper yard.
I can't imagine 20 minutes of that chaos.
Yeah, but I mean, just that's the environment you're living around.
Right.
And so, I've seen a few murders and that's when I really started to realize, look, on the street, yeah, you're a tough guy. You'll fight. You'll do this, that, and the other. On the streets, I stabbed a couple dudes, shot at people. I don't think I ever hit anybody, but prison dudes that are tough guys, they're guys that'll kill you, and they're guys that'll kill you face to face,
right?
Or stab you in the back while you're in the chow line or whatever. Bottom line is they'll get up on you and put their it's very personal. Stabbing somebody and killing them is a very personal way to kill someone. So it's not a drive-by. It's not.
Right.
So that's a tough guy in prison. Guy that's settled, and I kind of realized, I'm not that tough guy. And
Right.
I'm not. I don't want to go down that fucking road.
So there were times, so you were deciding who you were and who you weren't at that point too. And, there's so many years in between there, but 38 years later, you were out. So you've spent from 15 to 38 saturated in violence. And,
Yeah, actually, 12. I went to juvenile hall. I started going there when I was 12, actually.
Yeah, so 12 ramping you up, and then 38 years after your sentence, you're now in this, you're now in a free world.
Right.
What does that look like for you? I mean, there's got to be, you're kind of being reborn, but at the same time, you
Yeah.
can't lose all of you.
Well, like during the course of my prison time, like when I was in Lancaster, I worked in arts and corrections. And I got a job, arts and corrections in Lancaster, everywhere. It's the state buys the paint, the brushes, materials to do artwork. Say they did screenwriting, they had a band, and all that stuff. But I worked in there. I was in charge of it. I used to help with art classes, and eventually I taught art classes. And so my boss was like, I was like, "How big is our budget?" And she goes, "Oh, okay, you got." I think she told me $1,500 or something like that. And I'm like, "All right," so order some shit. And then every year we would have an art show and auction off all the artwork because the state buys the material, so technically they own the artwork that we do.
Gotcha.
And then the money from the sales would go to the Children's Center of Antelope Valley, where they help abused children and their mothers. And so the first art sale we had, all the art was mine. The program was kind of limited, and we made $5,000. And
Oh, wow.
So she came in. And she was all excited. And she went to Juilliard. She was a screenwriter. She was a pretty smart lady. And she goes, "Man, we made $5,000. I was like, "Yeah, all right, whatever." She goes, "We've never even made $2,000. And she was pretty stoked. And
Yeah, right.
Yeah, she was thrilled. And they allowed me to choose the chair. They case, "Hey, do you mind if the money goes to this group?" And I thought, well, abused children are the guys that end up in prison.
Yep.
I was really happy that the money went to them. And so she goes, "Hey, our budget's coming up." I go, "All right, cool. How much we got?" She goes, "We got $8,000. Spend it all." And because if you don't spend your money in your department, some other department will get the leftovers and spend it. So
gotcha.
I was like, and so she let me order whatever I wanted. I worked in there for about 4-5 years.
Nice.
I helped create the honor yard there. I ended up teaching guys how to draw and paint. We raised a lot of money for charity. And so I developed my art skills. Tattooing was kind of, I still did it, but not much.
Right.
I'd gone to board 14 times. 9 times I had board hearings come up. I'm like, "Hey, I'm not going." And I remember one counselor goes, "Well, you got to go." I go, "No, I don't." She goes, "Well, then you got to sign these denial papers." I go, "I'm not signing shit. I'm not participating." Because the state got to the point where they weren't letting anyone out that had a life term to life meant you were going to die in prison.
Huh.
So my mentality was, I'm going to die in prison. So I want to have art supplies, music, decent food whenever I can get it. That was my, I had a choice. It was either that or spend the rest of my life in the hole.
Gotcha.
And
so at least there's some freedom there for you.
Yeah, I got into my art. It was my escape. I did motorcycle art. I did all kinds of shit, landscapes, flowers, you name it. And, I could sell a little bit of it, and
so that's kind of the model you're following now.
Yeah, things changed, the prison system, like I said, it got 180,000 people. Once a week, somebody died due to lack of medical treatment, which was our saving grace, unfortunately. The federal courts, after 20-something years, finally ruled that the state had to lower their prison population. Basically, if you can't take care of people, you can't lock them up,
Right. We've had a reverse issue. We've had an issue with that with the way we've had bail reform here in New York, though. There's a lot of crimes that you can commit them and get an appearance ticket that once would have had you gone for a while. And so you could basically do something to somebody in their house, get an appearance ticket for certain crimes, and be right out that night.
Yeah, I think in some places they've taken it to the other
Yeah, they
extreme,
went way the other way. So we've
Uh,
had, we've had some problems in Rochester right now. In Rochester, New York, it's been pretty much a war zone for quite a while. There's
yeah,
not a lot of opportunity where the trouble is, and they're just, fighting it out. And I think, a couple of cops were shot recently, and one was killed. You'll start seeing, I think, some more action maybe. But we struggle, and I think it's the same type of thing that you were talking about. There's really no direction young. There's no other option provided. There's no even hope generations deep now. They don't. There's
yeah.
no mentor out there in the family that sees anything different. So this is kind of how you grow up. Well, one of the things that, and this really is what drew me to you, in terms of having you on the show, and that is, I believe in the work you're putting in, man. I really do. I mean, I don't know you. We've just met today, actually, for real. But seeing your channel grow and the way that you're delivering that, it's not, you're just authentic in the way you share.
Thank
What brought Hard Intentions about? I guess we've got a few more minutes left here, and I just want to know, what caused it to be Hard Intentions, and how are things going there?
Well, our motto is whatever you do, do it hard, right?
Yep.
So I did like the thing behind me is one of my t-shirt patterns. And so, I heard about these guys that did Tap Out and Affliction. They had this shirt company and they sold it for like $3 million. I thought, man, shirts are,
Mhm.
that's insane. So I got out of prison. I paroled to South Central Los Angeles. I lived on 54th in Vermont. We were the only whites in the neighborhood. I loved it. It was cool. I got a motorcycle, started working a little bit. I moved up to Placerville with my wife, which is in Northern California. And I was like, I want to start this shirt business. I came into some money, started the shirt business, and then Jesse James from West Coast Choppers, I messaged him and he messaged me back and gave me a shout out, and
That's awesome.
it gave us a bump. Yeah, and I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. And then I did an interview with Josh from Lockdown 23 and 1, and then started my own channel. And, when I went to board, finally, I went through the long-term offender program. It's a lot of different programs like anger management, substance abuse, family relations, all that kind of stuff. So, and I went to board, and I had a board member who went from CO all the way up to warden, and then he was a board member. And I guess he was a Marine. He was used to train Ultimate Fighter,
Hmm.
and so if basically, if your victim's not a woman, child, or cop, all you got to do is just go in there and he was a decent dude. After the hearing, he goes, because I got caught selling tobacco
Hmm.
prior to this, like 5 years prior, and they denied me for 5 years over that. And that's when I realized, none of these guys in here give a fuck about me, and all my friends are gone. I'm gonna try to get out. So anyway, he goes, I could have denied you for selling tobacco. I go, I know. And he goes, don't ever take the easy way out again. I said, I won't. And he told me, he goes, guys like you are our biggest asset. And I'm like, what do you mean? He says, you got a story to tell, and I'd like you to tell it. And he goes, when you get a chance to come back into these prisons, I'd like you to come in these prisons and tell these guys and hear your story. And so after that's kind of what my channel is. It's what it became. I told my life story, and I interviewed guys I was in prison with, and some guys that I wasn't. And I just want people to know, especially young guys, that they don't have to go to prison to figure it out. Bottom line, my artwork is, I do okay. I don't do great with it, but it's something I love. But the channel, we've had guys come on my channel on lives, talk about drug use, and now they're clean. They've been clean for almost 2 years.
Hmm.
Wednesday night lives are kind of like meetings for some
Yeah.
some guys.
Yeah. You got regulars I've seen on there. I jump on every now and then.
Yeah, and I get messages from people that are veterans. I get messages from people that have been to prison. Guys struggle with substance abuse. Guys that are fighting cases call me on the phone and say, "Hey, I've never been to jail. What do I expect?"
I get that question a fair amount from families. So my fiance and I work, excuse me, a lot with those struggling with addiction and trying to get out of it. And that's been my history. And so, I get a lot of questions from families when their kid finally catches his first charge, like a real one, and they not know what to experience, how to handle it, and that type of thing. So it doesn't surprise me you get those questions.
Yeah,
Mitch, we are kind of at time here. I just wanted to see if there's anything, we've skipped through your story. It's hard to unpack, 38 years of a man's sentence and your in totality of your life in an hour. But you, there's a lot to what you have to offer. If people listen, yes, you do tell stories. They're interesting to listen to, but I also see you lean into advising people a lot. Like even with your guests, you guys try to get to a point to say, why not do things? Even I've seen you talk about kids and things that way. But is there
yeah.
one thing that you would direct to my audience and one piece of advice you'd like to leave them with?
Um, well, yeah, I want to give a shout out to Jesse James for believing in my thing on that Instagram thing. Which, yeah, if you see, if as an adult, man, if you got youngsters around you that are troubled heading down that road, show them you believe in them and try to teach them a different way to go. Especially if you've been there. If you've been down that fucking road of drugs, abuse, prison, jail, it's not fun really, and it's not a good way to live. It leads to, like they say, jails, institutions, and death.
Mm-hmm.
And death comes in a lot of different ways. Sometimes you're sitting in a jail cell and you feel like you're dead. So if you see a youngster going down that path, man, let them know there's a different way. And sometimes that just means, saying, "Hey, what's up?" I'm sitting down and chatting with him. I mean, uh, that youngster, that kid in the neighborhood, maybe he just needs somebody to be a mentor, and he doesn't know it. You know,
I appreciate
This-
that. You described something I find very important: eye contact. We can't go out, making posts and talking about certain things. You actually got to sit with somebody. 'Cause that's the only
right,
way they're going to hear you. You can't make some broad brush statement about some population and not invest in them 1 minute and expect to see a change. So I
right.
definitely
If
appreciate that.
you take a 13-year-old kid who's going down the path he thinks is cool, and you look him in the eye and shake his hand and say, "Hey, what's up?" How you show interest in him. Sometimes that can overpower the draw in the other direction.
Right. Well, Mitch, I appreciate you coming on the show. I know Jesse James helped you out with your show, but you've helped me with mine as well too. I mean, you got a good, strong following. I would encourage people that are interested in this content. Man, he's got some great stuff to listen to and some great guests to get around. You can just tell a lot of people you have on there are authentic in terms of describing where they're at and where they're headed. But again, thanks for coming on the show.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me.
no problem. And please make sure you like and subscribe to the Chris and Retro YouTube channel. Also, check out Hard Intentions, like and subscribe. We both can use the support to keep growing what we're trying to do here. Until next time, we'll talk to you soon.
Hey, get out there and do it hard. Thank you.
Thanks, Mitch.